All right, so we're recording. This is Frederick Keniston with Axiom, and I'm giving a demonstration of Microsoft Office Importer to Kaya Schroeder. And is it Kaizen? Kaizen?
Kaizen Architectural
Kaizen
Group.
Architectural Group. Okay, good.
Yep.
And so the program I'm going to show her is Microsoft Office Importer for Revit. And just to give you a little bit of background on it, it actually comes from a long line of programs of basically the same name. First one existed in MicroStation since 1996, and then we developed a AutoCAD version of the same tool in 2010, and this one for Revit has been around for 2 years now. So it has a lot of development behind it.
Sure.
Now, when you install the program, it gives you the ability to import Word and Excel files or portions of them into different areas of a Revit project, which I'll show you. And you get this Axiom ribbon panel, and the buttons in the upper left here are the program.
Okay.
So I'll go out to a sample Excel file. I'll do some paste with both Word and Excel, just so you know, but I'll just start with Excel.
Okay.
So you highlight what you want, do a copy, go back, you click the first button, which is paste. It analyzes the information, turns it into Revit objects, click of a mouse, finish, and when I zoom in, there's the paste. Now, what you're looking at here is a schedule. It's a standalone schedule. It's not linked to any of the project data. And if I go to settings, under pasting, it says paste Excel files as, and notice it says schedule. This applies to pasting Excel into a sheet. So that's the default for pasting into a sheet. You have the option, though, of also saying paste it as a detail group with text, notes, and lines. Outside of a sheet, and there's a number of different areas we can paste into outside of a sheet, it'll always be a detail group. And Word, no matter where we paste it, whether it's a sheet or otherwise, will always be a detail group, just so you know.
So if it's a schedule, then does it create an actual schedule file on the left? Yeah.
Right there.
Oh, okay. Okay, wonderful. Okay.
Now, because it's no matter what we paste or where, it's Revit object. If I give this project to anyone and I do not include the source file that the paste came from, it doesn't matter. They're going to see what was pasted, and they won't get any odd link errors or anything like that with the source file not being found. So it doesn't rely on the source file once the data is pasted in. But if you have Microsoft Office Importer, it is linked back through the program for you. So if I click this Edit Source button, this will open the source file for the paste in its application and highlight the exact pasted area so you don't have to go looking around for it. And here, I'll make a couple of obvious changes. I'll change the color of this text, and I'll change the information in this cell. Save the file. When I go back, I'll click this Manage Link button, and then click Update here, and this will update the paste based on the changes I made.
Okay.
This dialog box gives you a couple other things as well. This is the name of the source file. If the file name is changed or if it's moved on disk, you can click Select, navigate out, pick it up again. It'll reset the link to the file.
Okay.
It also says Update automatically when the project opens. The default for that is, in the Revit version, is to prompt you before updating any paste. So you open the project, it checks the source files, and it says, I found paste that could be updated. Would you like to do so, yes or no? If you say no, you can still manually update them through this dialog box here with individual pastes, or you can do a number of pastes at the same time in another area, which I'll show you in just a second.
Okay. Quick question.
Yep.
On the source file there, we have a lot of our documents that we share or work between my 3 business partners and I. We're not in the same office. And so we utilize OneDrive. Have you guys, do you know if there's any issues with having a file on OneDrive, on, in essence, the web versus having it on our computer itself? In order to
good question. Right. So in order to do, at least currently, in order to do the link or update the link, the files have to be local.
Okay.
Or on a local network drive, UNC or map drive, either way. But once you put the project in the cloud, you'll then see the pasted data. There won't be any problem with that. You just wouldn't be able to update the paste, at least currently. We are looking at ways of being able to link and then also update in different scenarios like that, like with BIM 360, maybe OneDrive,
Yep.
things like that.
Yep. Yep.
We're just not there just yet.
Okay. Okay.
But we're looking at that.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, in addition, on this dialog box, the Excel attributes, this is the range of cells that the paste is composed of. You can use these fields in the following fashion. If you click Edit Source, and then let's say insert a column, for example, and save the file, if I update the paste now, it's going to push that concrete curb and gutter column here on the far right outside of the original pasted area. So these fields you can use to adjust the scope of the paste on the fly to pick up the data that was part of the paste initially in this case.
Okay.
You could also use these fields to just expand or contract the scope of the paste, or even just move the scope of the paste if you needed to do anything like that. So that was Excel in a sheet. Now I'm going to paste a Word file or a section of it into a sheet as well. And I'm going to grab this section because it has a bunch of different formatting. It has bold, italic, underlined text, different fonts, numbered paragraphs, indented paragraphs, a bulleted paragraph, and also table data and superscript and subscript. So I'll copy all that and paste that in. And then when I zoom in, you'll see all the different formatting I just displayed in the Word file. We go for very exact formatting. And this is linked back just like I showed you the Excel file is. So I make a change in the pasted area, I can then update the paste accordingly. Now, one thing I'll note regarding Excel paste, when we paste into a sheet as a schedule, we can show colored text and filled cells like you see here. But as a detail group, just the way Revit allows us to work with it, we can't show colored text and filled cells when it's pasting as a detail group, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Now, for a while, in addition to sheets, we've also been able to paste into drafting views and legends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a paste into a drafting view just to show you the difference for Excel compared to pasting it into a sheet by default. And there's the paste. And again, no colored text or filled cells here, but the data is still the same as far as if I edited the text, if I adjusted the column widths and row heights and saved the file, I could update the paste just like I showed you before.
Okay.
In addition to those areas I named, sheets, drafting views, and legends, about a year ago now, we also added the ability to paste into floor plans, area plans, ceiling plans, and engineering plans as well. Now with that, I'm going to go into this button here. This opens a special dialog box called the list of links. This lists the current Microsoft Office import links in the project. If I double click on a link, it will take me to the paste, so I don't have to go looking around the project for it. Under details, if it says Olay link, it's a Word file, always. If it says anything else, it's going to be the sheet name and the range of cells that the paste is composed of for Excel.
Okay.
You'll also see under status that the if a paste is up to date or not. And if it's not, if you see more than one of these, you could use Shift or Control click to pick the ones you want, and then click the Update button from here, and it will update all of the ones that you've got selected based on changes made in their source file. You could also open the Manage dialog box from here. You could edit the source file from here. Source folder will open Windows Explorer or File Explorer into the folder where the source file you've got selected is located, if you needed to look around there for whatever reason. And then you can delete paste with this button too, which I'm going to do so to show you that to set up things for the next major feature of the program, which I'll show you.
Okay.
Let me adjust my view and then go into settings again under pasting again, but this time at the top. Notice it says split paste into columns. That's on by default. But for Word or Excel, I can tell it by turning this next option on how many rows of header information, which is the first number of rows in the Excel file, to copy over the top of each column that splits off. So I'll save that number 5 there for now. I'll go back to my Excel file, I'll grab all of it, which is about 4 pages of information. And then I'll paste it. Click once. Then I'll split the paste with this button on the secondary dialog box, and it gives me a representation of where the columns are going to fall. If I move up or down, it adjusts the height. If I move left or right, it'll adjust the spacing between the columns. And with a second mouse click, it pastes the data. I click finish. Oops, I messed that up here. I forgot to click one other thing. Let me try that again. Okay, they're going to split, paste. And then on the secondary dialog box again, I'll click this button to say repeat the header rows over all the columns split off. Click redraw, and on the fly it does it. And there you go.
Nice.
I like to call this the magic part of the show. But wait, there's more. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with Word, and after I paste my Word file like that, I'm going to explain something about this feature which is not obvious from the program interface, but I think you'll like too. So click here, split that just like I showed you before, just kind of eyeball it here, and finish. Now, this feature I showed to a prospect who's since become a customer of ours over a year and a half ago. When I showed this to him, he said, look, I have a client where I have a Word file which contains 128 pages of specifications that the client requires I make part of his Revit project sheets. So he said, when I showed him this feature for Word, he says, what I'd like to do is paste all of that Word file into one sheet, splitting it into columns, maybe using some reference planes to guide the spacing between the columns. And then after it's all pasted in, grab columns that are split off, cut them, go to new sheet, paste them in. And he said, when I do so, I want them to still be part of the same paste so that if I have to update that Word file, the columns will still update as being part of the same paste, even though they're split off into other sheets. So we did that for him. And so that feature exists in the program, and it works for both Excel and Word for columns split off like that in the same type of viewer area. So I can go sheet to sheet and drafting view to drafting view, that sort of thing. But I can't cross views or areas, so I couldn't go sheet to drafting view, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
So, maybe one question on that. So was
Sure.
that was all, so when you said 128 pages, that was all in one single document, Word document.
Yes.
The source file was just 120 pages.
That's correct.
Okay.
And this was a client for his in California. Evidently, that client and the planning authority that they were doing, that was approving the work, required that specifications like that be part of that documentation.
Sure.
So we had to make part of the sheets.
Yeah. Okay.
Which in some jurisdictions, that's very common. So.
Yeah. We ran into that at different times.
I understand. So now I'm going to go into the settings here, and I'll finish it off with this. So click the settings button, and the text, by default, it uses the same fonts as the source document. But any font that's available to you in Revit, you can use as a default font. If you do use a default font, in order to get the most exact match and to prevent font mapping issues, like due to differences in character height and width and character spacing, when you compare one font to the other, you want to make sure that the source file uses that same font exclusively. That way it'll map directly with the formatting being very, very perfect. Under scale, this is a default scale factor which I use for demos, and it's just a ratio of the point size of the text in Word or Excel to the measurement being used in the project, which is inches in this case. But this works whether it's metric or imperial, doesn't matter. However, the default and what most Revit users use is this map text sizes feature. This will fill in the Revit text sizes that you see here based on what's in the project. So if it's metric, it'll fill in the metric text sizes. If it's imperial, fill in those.
Okay, yeah.
And then you can use these fields in the following fashion. If you needed 10-point text to map to 3/32, for example, you can edit these fields directly, save the settings file by going File, Save Settings, and the name of the settings file is here in the title bar, by the way. then whenever I paste with this settings file loaded, it will always map 10-point text to 330 seconds and the others accordingly, however I've modified them.
Okay, so that by doing that, then you can match whatever, your text sizes are within your Revit model.
That's right.
Like you said. So, okay. Yeah, because sometimes when you paste things in, you'll have a Word doc that's text is 3 times bigger than all your other text.
That's right.
Developed in Revit. Okay.
Yep. So you can use this to tweak that as needed.
Okay.
Now, when I go to the next option, pasting, so this is where you split paste into columns, and then linking. The program has always been designed to link back to the source file, and with the paste being a reflection of what's going on in the source file. But if you run into a scenario, and I'm covering this because I get asked this often enough to where I just cover it now by default, which is if you want to just paste the data into the project to where you then only want to maintain that data within the project, in other words, a workflow issue where that might make sense, then here's what we'd have you do. Go File, Save Settings As, and give it an obvious name like unlinked or whatever the case may be, whatever you want that to be. And then turn the setting off and save your settings. Now, with this settings file loaded, what you can do is this. You can use all the other features and settings of the program like I showed you, splitting paste into columns, set the scale factor for the text, the font, etc. It just won't be linked back to the source file after you paste it in, and you could then maintain that pasted data within the project from then on. That way it won't inadvertently or on purpose update based on a change made in the source file. Then when you're ready to use the program as you normally would, then you do a File, Load Settings, load whatever settings file would be appropriate, and if it links back, then the paste you make from then on would be linked back. You can also save different settings files out to cover different specifications for different projects so that if some use different text sizes or different fonts, that sort of thing, then you can just go File, Save Settings As, and give it a name like a project name or customer name, and then just load that settings file by going File, Load Settings whenever you need to work on that project.
Okay. And
depending on how you want things organized, different Revit users will organize it differently. They might have a central folder somewhere out on a network drive or something like that where all their settings files are saved, or they might have a folder down in the project folder that contains the settings file for that particular project. It's very flexible in that regard.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Now, lastly, updating. So the default for the Revit version of this program is to prompt you before updating any automatic paste. And this is a settings file setting. In other words, whatever's saved in the settings file for this particular setting, when you close Revit, the next time you open it, that's what will be in force.
Okay.
Now, you can change this, though. You could say, update the automatic paste without asking. Now, that happens to be the default for the MicroStation AutoCAD version, but Revit users wanted more control over that, so we changed the default for them to the second one.
Okay.
You can also say, don't update any automatic paste at all. In that case, you can still manually update them through the Manage Link dialog box or the List of Links dialog box, which I showed you earlier as well.
Okay.
Now, that's the program. Any other questions for me?
I don't think, not at this moment. I think I asked them as we were going through. So
cool. So I'm going to give you an email address then. And Graham, are you there, by the way?
I am here.
Okay, good. So the email address that I'm displaying on the screen, I'll send it to you via the chat of Zoho Meetings. You can grab it easier. And then I'll explain what you can use this for. Here it goes. There it is. And it's for a couple things. One, if you or any of your partners have technical questions after I get off the line with you, you can use it for that.
Okay.
Plus, if you have other things that you run into in your workflow, you want to see if we have a program, or you might say, hey, would you guys consider developing a program that would handle whatever that is? Anything along those lines, you could use that email address for as well.
Okay.
So with that, Kaya, I'm going to get off the line here and leave you on the line with Graham. He'll have information on pricing, licensing, and trial versions, that sort of stuff, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Frederick.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Frederick.
Yep,
Take care.
And here's Graham. Yep, you too.